He called in a probable homicide, and that's when the gears started moving. Within half an hour, 5 forensic technicians had arrived to process the scene, and Detective Olivia Rhodes had begun interviewing potential witnesses. A detective had numbered and described each photograph, giving me a guide as I flipped through the stack. The first few pictures documented the layout of the building, orienting the crime scene inside the larger structure. The photographer had snapped pictures of a kitchen with light maple cabinetry and a living room with a television, lounge chairs, and pool table. A vase of calla lilies rested on the counter beside the stove. They were my niece's favorite flower. My wife and I always sent them to her on her birthday. Rachel, my niece, lay in the center of the room. Her skin had paled, indicating that her blood had already begun to settle inside her body, and her arms were pressed against her sides like a supine soldier at attention. I stared at the picture for a moment, my stomach twisting. She didn't deserve that. I skimmed through the next few pictures. The photographer had snapped more shots of the kitchen and living room. They were helpful for orienting someone in a crime scene, but weren't particularly interesting to me. I stopped when the photographs started focusing on my niece. The photographer had started with wider shots of her placement, and then continued by capturing her closely from her head to her feet. She had no obvious external injuries, nor could I see puddles of blood around her. That was comforting. Unfortunately, I knew without even reading the crime scene report that someone had staged her body. I turned through the stack of photos until I found one focusing on Rachel's neck. She wore a light blue polo shirt with an open collar. I couldn't see ligature marks on her neck, but the bottom button on her collar had been popped off, leaving a pair of strings in its place. The detective in charge might not have thought much of it, but that wasn't like Rachel. She was as meticulous about her clothes as anyone I had ever met. She wouldn't have worn that shirt until she had a new button sewn back on. I shifted in my seat and flipped through a few more pictures until I saw one focusing on her waist. Rachel wore a denim skirt with buttons instead of a zipper in front. The buttons were misaligned, though, so the skirt would have ridden uncomfortably against her abdomen. She wouldn't have done that to herself. I continued turning over photographs until I saw one I couldn't explain. It looked like a shot of the carpet. Puzzled, I scanned through the notes that accompanied the photographs until I found the appropriate one. The photographer had tried to capture track marks. I looked at the picture again, straining my eyes until I saw 2 long strips where the carpet's mat was flattened in one direction. I couldn't be sure, but it looked as if someone had pulled Rachel into the room by her arms, with her feet dragging behind her. Bile rose in the back of my throat. I stared at that picture, thankful I hadn't seen it before going to my sister's house. Since I had come right from home, I hadn't been able to tell her much about her daughter's death. That was probably good. The rest of the pictures focused on something odd, a glass vial full of a brownish-red liquid. The technician's notes said someone had found it on an end table in one of the bedrooms. It was roughly the size of a cigar, and when the technician picked it up to catalog it, the liquid inside coated the glass like cough syrup. The note for that photograph said the technician had found pink lipstick on the rim that presumptively matched Rachel's. What were you into, honey? My desk phone rang, startling me. I glanced at my watch. It was after 10, well past my regular hours, so I doubted it was a casual phone call. I picked it up. "Rashid," I said. "What can I do for you?" "Yeah, Detective Rashid. This is Sergeant Hensley at IMPD downtown. Olivia Rhodes brought in somebody in your niece's case, and I thought I'd give you a heads up." I nodded. Hensley was an old-school watch sergeant and had been on the force before we had civilian oversight committees or cameras in every room. When he was my age, interrogations had included rubber hoses and phone books. I envied him.